Take a look at this. What do you see? I see two fighter jets parked next to each other. Am I collecting planes now? No. It's the 1959 Cadillac Eldorado.
Yippee-yay, there'll be no wedding bells for today. I got spurs that jingle, jangle, jingle,
Jingle jangle,
as I go riding merrily along.
jingle jangle,
And they sing, oh, ain't you glad you're single?
jingle jangle,
And that song ain't so very far from wrong.
jingle jangle.
Oh, Lily Bell,
Oh, Lily Bell,
oh, Lily Bell,
oh, Lily Bell.
though I may have done some fooling, this is why I never fell. 'Cause I got spurs that jingle, jangle, jingle,
Jingle jangle,
as I go riding merrily along.
jingle jangle,
And they sing, oh, ain't you glad you're single?
jingle jangle,
And that song ain't so very far from wrong.
jingle jangle.
I got spurs that jingle, jingle,
I got
jingle,
spurs that jingle, jangle,
as I go
jingle,
riding merrily
as I go
along.
riding merrily
And they
along.
sing, oh, ain't you glad
And
you're
they sing,
single?
oh, ain't you glad that
And
you're
that song
single?
ain't so very far
And
from
that song
wrong.
ain't so very far from wrong.
Oh, Lily Bell, oh, Lily Bell.
You see, this is a tribute to the jet age. A symbol of retrofuturism. Before all the boxy cars took over in the 70s and 80s. This 59 Cadillac is the king of American land yachts, let me tell you that. I mean, all the other land yachts are great, but this is the one that started it all. The one that set the bar for all the others that came after. This is the one with the greatest tail fins ever. The 59 Eldorado, the Granddaddy Caddy. So let's talk a little bit about 1959, because for the year 1959, Cadillac made 3 different trim levels of this car. And the most famous one, the Eldorado, was basically the highest and most luxurious trim level on offer. Because the mid-range version was called, depending on whether it had 2 doors or 4 doors, the Coupe de Ville or Sedan de Ville, and the entry level was called the Series 62. Although they all look very similar to one another, especially for non-car people, you can tell the Eldorado apart from the Coupe de Ville and the Series 62 by the fact that it did not have a pinstripe running along the side, as they did. And I believe there was also an estate wagon variant of this car, but it wasn't sold to the public as such, but rather as a commercial chassis to serve either as ambulance or hearse, and also ended up being used for the Ghostbusters Ectomobile. But returning to just the Eldorado trim, Cadillac made 3 versions of the Eldorado for the 1959 model year. They made this 2-door hardtop, which is known as the Eldorado Seville. They made a pretty rare in terms of limited production 4-door hardtop with the help of Pininfarina in Italy, which is known as the Eldorado Brome. And speaking of 4 doors, there was also a 1959 Cadillac 60 Special, aka Fleetwood, which had like a separator here and an additional dummy air scoop above the rear fender here, purely for aesthetics. And there was also a Cadillac Series 75 that had 6 windows instead of 4, with like rear quarter glass and folding seats so that 8 people could sit in it. But the 60 Special and the Series 75 weren't Eldorados anymore, so I don't want to confuse you any further. And so returning to the third and final Eldorado version, after the Seville 2-door coupe and the Brougham 4-door sedan, the third Eldorado version was the 2-door convertible known as the Eldorado Biarritz, which is of course the one you probably have heard about because Maisto made it in 1/18 scale. And the most common color you will find online is the pink one, but Maisto also made it in red, in white, and in blue. All 3 of which are a lot rarer than the pink. But recently the company WhiteBox released the Eldorado Seville in 124, and I decided to get this one instead because I preferred the gold over the pink, and trying to find one of the other colors of the Biarritz in mint condition was kinda hard. Most of the time you find them without box and with the chrome beginning to rust. So I decided to get this brand new release by WhiteBox in 124 scale instead. MSRP was like €25, and let's get the negative out of the way. Absolutely nothing opens on this car. It is a sealed 124 scale model. But it has a surprising level of exterior detailing for the scale, which in certain instances even surpasses the 118 Maisto Biarritz. So let's get started with this review. First, let's talk a little bit about the paintwork on this car, because it really does the name Eldorado justice. Eldorado is this mythical city of gold located deep in the South American jungle, and what better way to remind us of that than the golden paint job, which looks absolutely amazing in direct sunlight. All the pigments begin to sparkle brilliantly. So taking a look at the front of the 1959 Cadillac Eldorado Seville, perhaps we're going to start with the windshield itself, because this is what was called the wraparound windshield. Because you can see the windshield continues where the A-pillar normally would be. So it sort of wraps around the A-pillar area and continues on toward the side. So this is something vintage cars used to have, but maybe safety regulations kind of put an end to that. Pretty cool though. So now taking a look at the front fascia, you can just see that this looks so good for a 124 scale car. If we take a look at the headlights, you will see that there are absolutely no pegs in them. They are done beautifully. And the headlight covers also have a slight texture on them. The headlight housings are made out of chrome, which is also very nice. And you can see that the 59 Cadillac has 8 different lights. We got 2 headlights on each side, so it's 4 in total, and then we have 2 fog lamps on each side, so another 4. And in between we have the grille, which is also done pretty nicely. I mean, you can see that the bars and the slats are made out of chrome, and in between we have the areas painted in black. And then we have this chrome separator in the middle and a Cadillac license plate. It's just gorgeous. And now if we take a closer look at the vintage Cadillac emblem here, you can see that it doesn't have a lot of details, but it is at least slightly raised instead of just being a sticker or something. You can also see that we have these tiny fins here that WhiteBox made sure to include on the front. And those fins are sitting on the ends of 2 chrome bars that run along either side of the hood and give it that extra bit of definition. So like I said, the hood cannot be opened, but I'm still going to tell you a little bit about the engine, because these 59 Cadillacs came with a 390 6.4-liter V8, which a lot of the other versions also had, like the DeVille's and the Series 62. And of course up here you have chrome wiper blades, which also look really nice. And here's a look at the gorgeous side of the Cadillac Eldorado. I mean, just take a moment to appreciate those beautiful lines. There's nothing that symbolizes the excess of the 1950s than the Eldorado, and it's just absolutely amazing. It reminds me of one of those pre-war cars in the Fallout universe. But yeah, the 60 Cadillac was a little more subtle, but this one's like really the grandest. Now you can see the silver trim here, which starts underneath the vent glass and then runs diagonally toward the tail end of the car, and then down as a rocker panel all the way back to the front wheel. This whole thing is supposed to be chrome on the real Eldorado, but on this WhiteBox model they just painted it matte silver, while only keeping the front and the rear fenders in chrome. Which is kind of disappointing, considering on the 118 Maisto all of this is in chrome. Now regarding these taillight housing cones on the real car, on some they were body colored, and on some they were chromed out, like WhiteBox chose to do on this model. The 118 Maisto has these in body color, but both versions are equally accurate. You'll also notice that the rear wheels are partially covered by these fender skirts, very typical for cars from that era. But now let's take a closer look at the wheels. So this being a vintage car, it comes with white wall tires, and in the middle of the rims you can see the Cadillac emblem, which looks pretty nice. However, I have to say that the 118 Maisto Cadillac Eldorado Biarritz has much better looking rims because they actually have proper shading and everything. Whereas here on the 124 WhiteBox version, the entire rim is just like completely made out of chrome. It doesn't have any shadows or anything like that. I suppose you can add some of this yourself by watering down black paint and then painting over these rims so that the black runs into all the nooks and crannies and crevices and settles there. And then you can just polish the raised bits again to bring back the shine, but I'm not sure if I want to do that because it might end up looking bad. Anyway, right next to the wheel you can see that it says Eldorado in silver lettering. This is again something that would separate it from a Coupe de Ville or a Series 62, where you would not have this branding here. The mirrors are separate pieces made out of chrome, which contrast from the matte silver paint on the window trim, for example. However, the reflectors themselves are actually not made out of separate material, so they're made out of the same chrome, and so they don't really reflect a lot. The door handles are separate chrome pieces, though, which is again a nice attention to detail. Now, if you thought the front of the 59 Cadillac Eldorado was grand, would you take a look at the tail end? This looks absolutely amazing, doesn't it? One of the most opulent rear ends of any automobile created by man. Let's begin with the glorious tail fins. You can see that they have been modeled very accurately. And what I mean by that is that on the Maisto, the tips of these tail fins do not continue all the way to the edge before curving downward. Instead, on the Maisto, they kind of stop here and then curve a bit down to make a tip and then resume curving downward. Not sure why Maisto designed their model that way, but maybe because they thought kids would play with it and having a really sharp edge here might end up poking someone's eye out, so they made it blunt. So if you're a Cadillac Eldorado purist, you'll certainly be able to appreciate that extra bit of accuracy on this 124 WhiteBox model. Now let's take a look at the taillights. So these are the taillights of the Cadillac Eldorado, and they are shaped like twin bullets. And now take a look at this rear grille. Look how beautifully it is painted. Okay, well, if you take a real close look, you'll realize that some of the individual slats and bars could have used a little extra bit of silver. But if you look at it from a distance, what I'm trying to say is that WhiteBox made it look realistic, because this grille is perforated on the real Cadillac Eldorado. But on the 118 Maisto, this entire grille here is just one chrome piece. Like, it's got the slightly raised slats and bars and everything, but the spaces in between are not painted black. So it's just one shiny chrome piece, and it looks horrible compared to the effort that Maisto put into the front grille, where they did see to it that it has perforations. Also, if you're a fan of the 1959 Eldorado, you might notice another extra level of accuracy here. On the 118 Maisto, these pillars here seamlessly go all the way to the edge of these reflector housings on the rear bumper. But on this WhiteBox, there's a seam here, and they stop right at the base of the housings. So this is more accurate to the real car than on the 118 Maisto. On the bottom edge of the trunk, you can actually see that on the chrome trim it says Eldorado. It's a little hard to read, but that detail is definitely there. And then we have the jet exhaust shaped reflector housings, which of course contain the reflectors that are painted in red. And now let's move on to the interior, which is kind of hard to see because it's completely in black. But to be honest with you, there's really not a whole lot to see here at all. I mean, the interior is one of those areas where you can tell WhiteBox didn't put a lot of detail because all the detail in their budget went into the exterior of this model. The interior is kept in a very simple detail level. I mean, you can see that we have like small plastic bit up there to, I guess, represent the speedometer, or maybe it's like a device that gives you some reading. Apart from that, there's really nothing else that you can see here. But taking a look at the seats, we do have some details here. It's got a little bit of a leathery look to it. And the seat backs are, of course, also without the headrests, as you would expect from a vintage car. And taking a look at the back seats, you can see that there is also some details here. And now if we turn on the flash, I guess you get to see some details of the dashboard. You can see that there are some vents there for the aircon, and like a radio or something. I guess I should paint all of this in silver to make it more visible, so I'll have to take the car apart and do that. I might make a follow-up video one day. But yeah, let's check out the driver's side. So as we move on to check out the driver's side of the 59 Eldorado, you can see that the steering wheel is made out of this huge chrome double ring, which looks a little bit unrealistic, I'll have to tell you that. But you can see the stalks are also made out of chrome. I don't think there's even a gauge cluster behind the steering wheel, or even a sticker, or anything like that. I think it's just completely black. So apart from the steering wheel, there's really not much to see on the interior, unfortunately. But yeah, it's still a great car, I think. And now taking a look at the bottom of the Cadillac Eldorado Seville 124. You can see that the bottom is very detailed. I mean, it's a surprising amount of detail for a 124 scale car. Unfortunately, the exhaust system is not painted, with the exception of the mufflers and the exhaust tips over there, which look good. And in the middle you have the fuel tank, I think. The limited slip rear differential. More fuel tanks, perhaps? But yeah, I think if you paint this, it's gonna look a lot better. But it already is impressive. Well guys, that does it for the review of this 124 scale 1959 Cadillac Eldorado Seville. I hope you guys enjoyed this review, and check out some of my other ones too. Have a wonderful day. This is Imperial Diecast, signing out.